Alright guys, in today's video I'm going to be doing another reaction to a opinion piece article that I came across from VG247. It was written up by Tom Ori, I guess, if I'm saying his name right. And the title of the article reads, Xbox fans have loads of reasons to be happy, but next-gen games aren't one of them. So obviously a very loaded headline there. And before anybody jumps on me and claims that I'm doing this to hate on Xbox and talk negatively about it, that's not really what I'm doing. I think if you go back and listen to my content in the past week or two, any content that I've made talking about Xbox, while I haven't been maybe as celebratory as the average Xbox fan, since I'm not really a huge fan of the Xbox platform, I think I've been pretty fair. I've definitely said some very positive things about Xbox and the things they're doing. But what really interested me about this is the fact that it seems to be going against the grain. Okay, if anybody, listening to this has been paying attention to the conversation in recent weeks, it's been very much in favor of Xbox and how Xbox is making all these big moves and really just kind of gaining a lot of mind share rapidly and a lot of goodwill, which is certainly a good thing. And so I just found it interesting that in the middle of all this, we have an article that's being written up in a, professional manner and somebody giving their opinion. And what's interesting is I believe this individual who wrote this is in fact an Xbox fan. I think they're a fan of both Xbox and PlayStation. So I just thought it would be interesting to read what they're saying and just kind of react to it and give my thoughts on it. And I will also be very interested to see if you guys agree or disagree with what this individual has to say and what I have to say about it. So before we get into it, make sure you hit the like button to help the video out and show your support. If you do like this type of content and you want to see more of it, definitely hit that like button. It's the easiest way for you to let me know that you're interested in getting more content like this, and hit the subscribe button as well. So let's start here with the first few paragraphs. It says, Game Pass is on a roll and Bethesda is part of Team Xbox, but we are still waiting for signs of the next generation of games. There's no denying that it's been a great week to be an Xbox owner. Following Microsoft's acquisition of ZeniMax, which brings all of Bethesda's games and studios to Xbox, we got a load of Bethesda games on Xbox Game Pass. Days later, Microsoft announced that Square Enix's promising shooter Outriders would be arriving on Xbox Game Pass, console and cloud, on the day it releases. A bunch of Bethesda titles were given 60 FPS support on the Series X and S, and we got news of another wave of Game Pass titles, which includes Octopath Traveler, Undertale, and more. That is a lot of cool stuff. So he's starting out the article by doing, in my opinion, the smart thing, which is acknowledging all of the good things, all of the positive things that Xbox has done, because obviously when you title an article like this with a headline that is that aggressive and intense, well, okay, maybe that's an exaggeration. I don't know if I would call it aggressive, but something that is that against the grain, right? You definitely have to start by acknowledging the good things that Xbox has done. And you know what? I think that that's a smart thing. I'm reading all of these things, and there's no doubt that Xbox has been delivering a lot of really solid, really positive news for their fan base in recent weeks. And it's just like one announcement after the other, some obviously more significant than others. Obviously Microsoft's Bethesda acquisition, but announcing that Outriders is going to be there day one on Game Pass, definitely a big win for Xbox and anybody who's subscribed to that service. It's just a lot of good stuff. So I think that was a smart move. Goes on to say, while I absolutely believe that the future of Xbox is looking great, Bethesda Studios are the icing on an already scrumptious looking internal studios cake. It's an interesting way of putting it. The Xbox Series X was revealed in December 2019. In the 461 days since then, I can't think of a single demonstration of the console's next-gen capabilities from Microsoft itself that we can point to and go, that's what proper next-gen games on this machine will look like. Am I missing something, or is that really, really odd? I've noticed I still refer to the Xbox Series X and S and the PS5 as next-gen. They are both current-gen consoles that have been on sale for 4 months, but it still seems like we are waiting for this generation to launch. There's always this sense of a slow build at the launch of a new console generation, but this one, especially for Xbox, feels far worse than we've had in the past. He goes on to say this negativity feels harsh given that I think in pretty much all other areas of the business, Xbox is killing it. As I've said multiple times in the past, I am aware that the global pandemic has affected development. I do not want teams to crunch just so I, a gamer, can play games a few months sooner. However, as the Series X is said to be the most powerful games console of all time, I don't think it's too much to ask for a glimpse of what that really means. So these last 3 paragraphs I just read, I think he's really trying to go in on his main point here, where it's like, Xbox is doing all of these great things and definitely making some announcements that can garner goodwill and leave Xbox fans feeling good, feeling happy. But ultimately, he's, pointing out the, I guess we could say, fact that Microsoft really has not delivered anything truly meaningful. Now, obviously, the first thing that anybody listening to this or reading this is going to think of is, okay, well, what he's saying here is, I'd say mostly true. He's referencing the power of the Xbox and how we haven't really seen that. Even still, to this day, we still haven't really seen anything that's really that amazing, right? Something that really stands out that I think could really kind of, make you turn your head and go, wow, okay, that's next gen. As far as I'm aware, and I do pay pretty close attention to this stuff, I don't recall Microsoft showing anything like that yet. That's not to say that there aren't good or impressive looking games on the Series X, but I do mostly agree with what he's saying here. It seems like Microsoft really has stopped talking about the power aspect of their next gen console now that it's out, now that it's for sale and people have bought it, which is interesting because they really went in on that for like a year straight, with their marketing. And their big showcase was supposed to be with Halo Infinite, and that did the literal opposite of showcase what this console is capable of, to the point where obviously we knew that, like, okay, this is not indicative of what this console is capable of. We all know that. And we still kind of haven't seen that. So, like, we really haven't seen that, like, mind-blowing moment. And I don't necessarily know that the same can be said for PlayStation. I really don't. I'm going to talk about that in a minute as we go further into this article. But he's talking about the fact that there's a slow build here. He's talking about the fact that it just feels like, Xbox is making all of these announcements, but all of these announcements really, in terms of like games, like big games you can expect to get from their studios, like it's going to be a while from now, right? And he's not really talking about any of these smaller titles. And I call them smaller titles because I don't really know what else to call them. I know that there are games coming to the Xbox in the next like 4 to 6 months that are going to be exclusive to that ecosystem or that platform, but I can't really think of any off the top of my head. There's really none that stand out. There's really none that make me think like, oh yeah, like that's why I would want to go buy a Series X or S potentially to play. The only one I can honestly think of is Halo Infinite. And, he's just pointing out that in his opinion here, he is just a little bit confused as to, why is there really like nothing big seemingly lined up. And, he does point out the fact that he feels as though he's being maybe a little bit harsh because, as he said, he thinks that Xbox and pretty much every other area is doing really good, which at this point, I don't think anybody can argue. Xbox is doing good. They're definitely being proactive in trying to win back mind share and just have a lot of positivity surrounding the brand. But it's just this, it's this interesting conundrum, it seems, where I've seen a lot of Xbox fans myself where they're like, well, I guess the Xbox has no games narrative is officially dead and buried. And, I mean, yeah, I don't think we can say it's buried yet. I think we can definitely say it's dead. Like Xbox is going to have a lot of games, but I think the act of burying that narrative and making sure that it's never even a thing that's discussed again is not going to happen until Microsoft really starts bringing out these titles on a consistent basis, right? At least that's how I see it, in my opinion. I do agree that I don't think anybody can say at this point that Xbox isn't going to have any games. Of course they're going to, but anyway, let's move on here and finish up this article. So he finishes it by saying Sony isn't problem-free at the moment either, of course. but its games suffering delays, or with its games suffering delays, but we've seen a good selection of what's coming, and we've got actual dates for a number of them, including the gorgeous looking Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and what will hopefully be a surprise hit in Returnal. Xbox Series consoles have lived on some solid third-party releases, Game Pass titles, and neat upgrades to older games. Sony is the only platform holder showing what next-gen looks like. Every time an Xbox or Microsoft event is rumored, the fan base waits in feverish anticipation of what will be shown. No doubt there will be huge expectations on the next showcase or event, but I've come to expect nothing, so everything is a bonus. Given the delays of games that had solid release windows, I'm just not holding my breath for big new games anytime soon. I hope I'm wrong. I think it would do wonders for Xbox to show off some stone cold jaw droppers in the coming months. And the final paragraph says, fast forward a year, and the story will likely be very different. By then, we can hope to be somewhat free of CV's grip. Microsoft's investments in studios will be delivering, and we can focus on how good those games are instead of wondering where they are. My feeling is that Halo Infinite is going to be huge for Xbox this holiday season, and my fingers are crossed for it launching a steady stream of next-gen delights that will be loved by Game Pass subscribers and tempt newcomers to join the Xbox Club. So overall, he's ending the article in a relatively positive note for Xbox. But, you know, as a PlayStation 5 owner and as somebody who kind of held off on investing in the Xbox Series X, I have to agree with what he's saying here. You could make an argument for sure that, like, neither of these companies are really kicking off next gen in a really spectacular way with these amazing, huge next-gen games, but I would also argue that you could look at something like Demon's Souls, you could look at something like Returnal, you could look at something like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and maybe you can even look at something like Astro's Playroom as real next-gen games, right? Granted, these next-gen games, and I'm calling them next-gen games, because they are only releasing and have only released on the PlayStation 5, maybe Demon's Souls, I mean, that one I feel like is up for debate because it is a remake. I mean, I know it's PS5 only, and I certainly believe it could run on the PS4, you know what I mean? It's a remake of a PS3 title, but in terms of it being like a next-gen game, I really think that comes in the form of being a graphical showcase, being that game that's just kind of so visually stunning where it's like, wow, okay, like, so this is what next-gen consoles can do, right? A lot of people were saying that about Demon's Souls when they first saw it and when they've been playing it. It's a visual showcase. I mean, pretty much all of Sony's games are. But I feel like you could look at these titles and you could argue that, you know, Sony really is making a better case for, you know, this is a next-gen console. Here are some next-gen games, especially with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart with the, you know, rapid instantaneous teleportation that they're doing in that game on top of just how good it looks. And he does point out something that I think is very important, you know, and I do believe that this is potentially the most important thing, which is these games that he listed, you know, they're getting dates. Granted, we only have 2 right now. We have Returnal and we have Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, but that's 2 more than Microsoft has from their first-party studios. You know what I mean? Granted, Returnal is a second-party relationship, but all in all, I do agree with this notion that he's presenting in this article that, you know, Xbox fans have every reason to feel happy, to feel excited, to feel really just truly over the moon, I guess you could say, about the future of Xbox and the potential that is now here, and how, you know, in a couple of years, if Microsoft manages everything correctly, you could be looking at like a new game almost every single month, some bigger, some smaller. But, you know, I think we do have to kind of acknowledge like where we are right now, and this idea that Sony isn't also going to be firing on all cylinders at around the same time that Microsoft is. I think that that's something that we do need to kind of remind people of, is that, you know, Sony is the one that had a launch lineup, and maybe you didn't think it was the best launch lineup. Maybe you didn't think Demon's Souls was that great. To you, it's just a remake, whatever. To you, maybe Spider-Man Miles Morales was just a, you know, DLC. An over-glorified DLC, right? Maybe to you, something like Astrobot was just a, you know, ridiculous pack-in game that no one was going to care about. But I can tell you, as somebody who's played all 3 of these titles, That was a very, very solid launch lineup that turned out to be much better than I anticipated. Microsoft didn't deliver that. You know, we're going into April, we're going into May, and we're going into June, and I'm going to be looking forward to Returnal. I'm going to be looking forward to Deathloop. I'm going to be looking forward to Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. And I would assume that by the time we get to Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Sony's going to have, you know, multiple games that, and you know, not even just that, but even like Kenna Bridge of Spirits coming in August. I would assume that we're going to get dates for other games as well that Sony's going to be dropping later on throughout this year, including Horizon Forbidden West. And these are all games that look impressive to me. You know, they really do kind of come off as like, this is not necessarily full-blown next-gen. Like, they're going to blow your mind in every area, and like, you're going to be like, wow, like, okay, this is peak next-gen. No, but it feels like the first true step into it. Whereas with Microsoft, I genuinely feel that, yeah, it's massive. Absolutely massive, as I've been saying, that they acquired Bethesda, and they own all of Bethesda Studios, as well as all of that IP. That's going to do truly incredible things for the Xbox brand in the future, but it really still does feel like you're gonna have to play the waiting game. And I know that people don't want to hear that. And I know that there are going to be Xbox fans who literally want to fight me because I'm saying that. And I think that that's maybe a little bit ridiculous, because it's like, is what I'm saying really that untrue? You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to, you know, kind of combat my argument or my stance by saying, well, look at all of these things that Microsoft has been announcing. You know, you add them up together, you know, the Bethesda acquisition, they're announcing that they're giving 60 FPS support for all of these Bethesda games. All of these Bethesda games are launching in the Game Pass. They have Game Pass itself. They're bringing Outriders. If you want to tell me that these are all valid reasons as to why, you know, Xbox is roping in more gamers and why people would want to go and play on Xbox, maybe over PlayStation, you're totally right. I'm not taking that away at all. In fact, I think that those are all extremely valid reasons. You know, I talk to a lot of people where they say that, you know, the Xbox is just the place where they play, and they really just kind of use their PlayStation for exclusives. And I think that that's totally reasonable. Not even reasonable, it's totally valid. Like, it makes sense. Microsoft is doing a really good job in just giving you all of these smaller reasons that when you add them up, it turns into one big reason as to why you're going to want to play there. But for me personally, and I can only speak for me, and maybe I can speak for, you know, some PlayStation fans as to why they, you know, are so heavily invested in PlayStation over Xbox. I really feel that we do have to pay attention to the things that Sony actually does really well, and acknowledge the fact that the things that they do well hold a lot of weight. I really do believe that. I think that's what it ultimately comes down to, is it's like, you know, for me, if Demon's Souls was, let's say, on Xbox over PlayStation, I would have bought an Xbox at launch. I would have found a way to do that, because that's a game I would have wanted to play. You know, Ratchet & Clank coming up, if that was something that was coming out on Xbox, I would be over on Xbox to play that game. You see what I'm saying? Like, I gravitate to wherever these like big exciting games are releasing. Same thing with like Returnal, you know, and this is why I am excited about the future of Xbox alongside everybody else. It's just that I really don't feel confident in saying, well, this is going to be a big year for Xbox first party releases, because I don't think it's going to be. To whereas I do feel this is going to be a big year for first party releases for Sony. Maybe 2022 will be completely different for Xbox, and maybe it'll be completely different for PlayStation. But I don't know. I just found this article interesting because, again, it is going a little bit against the grain. And I know that some people, no matter what, are going to walk away from this reaction video I'm doing assuming that I'm just trying to talk negatively about Xbox. But I really hope you pay attention to the fact that I'm giving Xbox a lot of credit, that I'm pointing out and highlighting a lot of the good things that they are doing, and I'm not trying to take that away or downplay it. I do think, though, that it's easy, and I've done this myself on PlayStation side as well, it's easy to get way too caught up in the hype, and you kind of maybe go a little bit off balance and forget that there are still, you know, great things that are being done over here on the other side with the competition. But ultimately, it really is, and I guess I could just kind of end this video with this, because I do want to end it on a more positive note in general. It really does seem like both Sony and Microsoft are gearing up for potentially the most intense generation competition-wise that we have ever seen. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that Sony is, they're not shook, in my opinion, about this Bethesda acquisition, but I certainly believe that Sony is doubling down and really kind of like looking at this as like, okay, Microsoft isn't messing around anymore. You know, any chance that we maybe could have taken it a little bit easy, you know, or kind of slowed down a little bit, yeah, that's out the window. I think that what Microsoft is doing is great because it's providing even more competition. And to be honest, I don't think Microsoft would have made a move like this to acquire Bethesda and make such a big deal out of it and do everything they're doing with the value proposition if they weren't pushed to do so by Sony and Sony's big success with their games, right, and their platform. This is what, you know, competition does. It truly does breed greatness and gives us better stuff in the end. And so I really do think that even though Sony right now, I think they're doing great. I think that there are obviously things that they do need to improve, and they're not perfect with some of this stuff with their, you know, next-gen console and the way they're handling like updates and whatnot. And I definitely don't think Microsoft's perfect. I think that we still have to wait and see. You know, I think that overall, they're both doing really well. I definitely favor PlayStation still much more than Xbox. I mean, I can't sit here and make it sound like, you know, these games that Sony are bringing to the, you know, that they're bringing to the table in the coming months, I can't sit here and pretend that they're not a big deal to me. Like they are. Like I know not everybody is on board with Returnal. I know that Returnal is not everybody's cup of tea. And that game maybe even does spark a little bit of controversy because of the price point. But for me, based off of everything I've seen, everything that game is striving for, everything it offers, every trailer I've seen, it genuinely gets me very excited for this game. And it makes me think to myself, like, yeah, I really can't wait to play this. Like, genuinely, it looks really, really good, right up my alley. And, you know, the same can be said for a lot of the titles that Sony's bringing to the table. Right now, I simply do not feel that way about Xbox. You know, the idea of Outriders going to Game Pass day one, that is great, that is awesome, but that's not, for me personally, what's tipping me over the edge and being like, okay, I gotta go invest now. You know what I mean? Who knows, maybe Starfield will be the game that does it. I know Halo Infinite isn't going to be the game that does it for me, but, you know, I'm just trying to kind of, you know, make it clear, if I haven't already, as to why I still, you know, look at PlayStation in such a positive way, and I still kind of view what they do in such a positive light, because, you know, there's just been a lot of toxicity going around lately, and it's gotten kind of ridiculous. But there you go. That is my reaction to this article. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. Again, leave the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.